Biblical barbecues. In this week's Parsha, it says that several different offerings are isharech nichoach, that there are fire offerings that smell good. The Mishnah in Menachot notes that different offerings say this. Nemar ba'olah be'ema isharech nichoach, in regards to an offering of an animal, a valuable animal, like a cow, says that it smells good to God. V'olasa ofi isharech nichoach, and a poultry offering, chicken, smells good. And in regards to a grain offering, just of wheat, smells good. Like, let's take the metaphor. Obviously, there's a serious anthropomorphism going on here, but it's like you got a meal, and you got a fancy meal, and you got a medium meal, and you got a fast food takeout. And you said about all of them, looks good. Smells good. To teach, there's a lesson here, the sages said, because who's bringing the cow? Someone who's wealthy. Who's bringing the poultry? A member of the middle class. Who's bringing just the grain offering? Someone that doesn't have much, someone who's poor. So the fact that they all smell the same description teaches us that it doesn't matter whether one gives a more expensive or less expensive offering. What matters is that one's attention and awareness is directed to heaven, that there's a personal sincerity and authenticity in the practice of bringing the offering to God. It's as if the sages were commenting on the word mikem, kekriv adam korban mikem, when a person brings a sacrifice from themselves. It is not about the objective status of the sacrifice, but the quality of offering that's present in bringing it. Is it a real offering of the heart and of the soul? You'll know that. This concept, more or less, doesn't matter, it's the same, is expanded in Berachot. Margala befumayo de Rabbanan Yavne was a teaching that was common on the tongues of the sages in Yavne, the first rabbinic class. It's a teaching of humility, and it's necessary to say it. Ani bria v'chaverai bria. I am v'chaveri bria. I'm a creature, and my friend is a creature. Ani malachti ba'ir v'hu malachto basadeh. I work in the Beit Midrash, in the study hall, in the Talmud, the Daf Yomi, the books of Shulchan Aruch, the online hallways of Svaria. They work in the field. They're a blue-collar worker, an Uber driver, minimum wage worker, a busboy. Ani mashkim lamlachti v'hu mashkim lamlachto. I get up early to go to my work. She gets up early to go to her work. Kashem shehu eno mitgader b'malachti, kach ani eno mitgader b'malachto. I don't do their work. They don't do my work. Everyone leaves the work to be done by the person who's expert in it. It's equal. There's nothing better about being a sage. B'shema tomar, ani marbeh v'hu mamit. Lest you say, but I learn a lot and they learn a little. I'm a sage and they're not. Shaninu, echad marbeh v'echad mamit, b'vad she'echaven li b'la shamayim. It taught more or less, as long as the intention is to heaven. There's a third teaching, which I didn't bring on the source sheet here, later in Berachot, dealing with the length of prayer. And it quotes the same principle. A longer prayer, a shorter prayer, more words, fewer words. It's not better, not worse, but is it sincere? Is your heart directed to heaven? There's a lot to say about this. Not saying it's a good thing at all, but the coronavirus has laid bare and erased some of the privileges of wealth. Not all, but some. Prince Charles has the coronavirus, and Senator Rand Paul has the coronavirus. Sophie Trudeau has the coronavirus. Now, it's true, the entire New Jersey Nets team got tested, and we have people in our community who are sick as could be, some with underlying conditions, quarantined for weeks, and they can't get a test. even with all of our people, pulling all of their connections, contacting all of their representatives, even with doctors in the community, seems almost impossible to get someone a test. So our numbers are so low, but no one can get a test. But wealthy people, if they sniffle, or even if they don't, can seemingly get a test without having to go through the same bureaucracy. No one knows how. It's a miracle. That's true. And it's also true, of course, that people with access to good medical care, quality medical care, will fare better. And it's also true that people that can afford to work from home or not to work at all can place themselves at less risk if they choose. And so there are still privileges inherent. I'm not saying there aren't. But by and large, this pandemic has exposed that wealth can't protect people from the things that affect all of humanity. Or as my wife's grandmother likes to say, everyone puts their pants on one leg at a time. We're all people. These constructs of superiority sometimes fall apart. It's not just wealth. The rabbis moved it from wealth superiority in the bringing of sacrifices and brought it into the spiritual religious framework. And there's a religious egoism that comes with it as well. The one version is I have more money than you, and so I can bring a nicer sacrifice. My name is on the building, your name is not, that kind of a thing. But another version of it is I've learned the Talmud, I'm very learned, I know what I'm doing, and you don't. And we see this inequality all the time. Often I see it in conversion courts. I go to conversion courts, and because the rabbis who sit on the courts are rabbis by definition, there's a bias towards knowledge, and they ask very academic questions, ivory tower questions. And sometimes you have candidates who come forward who are not PhD candidates in Judaism, but they are pious. And the questioning of the court is way over their head. They're asking questions about Rav Chaim and Diukim, fine distinctions he made in legal concepts. And they're saying, I keep kosher, I keep Shabbat, I observe the laws, I pray to God sincerely. What do you want? And so there's this breakdown that can happen even without intention. It can happen very subtly. And so that's what the rabbis of Yavne are saying, that it's a fine line, or it's an easy move rather, to go from I am proud of my observance, I do what I feel is right, what is necessary, I sacrifice in a way that is valuable, to you don't. And you should be doing more of what I do. And it happens all the time in a synagogue context. You get people who volunteer, and we all do it, and you do something, and you do something, and you say, why am I doing this and they're not? And some of it is about fair share and people needing to step up, but sometimes it's about a different dynamic. It's the dynamic of religious egoism that is inherent, religious superiority. And it's common in the Orthodox world, and it's important to name this notion that we quickly go from sort of being proud of what we do to critiquing others for not doing similarly. And so the rabbis of Yavne warn against that. That's a powerful warning. Doesn't matter if you do more or less. Is there sincerity and authenticity in what's going on? Different strokes for different folks. And that's an important principle of Orthodox religious pluralism found right there in the Talmud. Okay, so we have this principle of religious egoism. How can it manifest in prayer? Because that's where the rabbis move it in the third teaching. The third teaching in Berachot is that it doesn't matter if you pray less, more. I think there's a practice for it. There's a how. The how is an interesting one. I experienced it this morning, davening Shacharit. I was going through the prayers, and there's more to say because Rosh Chodesh, I'm recording this a little early, and I found myself sort of rushing a bit. Started praying a little late, have to hurry up, get through it, that feeling. Sometimes the shoulds are, what can I skip? What should I skip? Am I praying enough? Am I praying with enough attention? Am I too distracted? There's a sort of self-critique dialogue that can go on, sort of meta layer of the prayer. And the practice is to note those things, not to fight them, but to daven with ease, not to have it feel unnecessarily rushed, also not to have it feel unnecessarily slow. I must take my time. Davening with ease can be quick sometimes. Sometimes it can be extremely fast. Sometimes the Hasidim would race through the davening. Sometimes I like to race through the davening. There's a kavanah that can happen in just getting the words out, and running with ecstasy in prayer, running, sprinting through the prayer. But sometimes you want to sit and smell the prayer. Let it kind of brew like wine You kind of move the glass around and let the aroma emerge. And so prayers are different. So the question isn't, did I say more or less today? Did I skip some things? Or did I say every word? How much time did it take on the clock? But was it an authentic prayer of the heart? Did I laugh? Did I smile? Did I cry? Was I moved to tears? Did I dance? Was I affected in any way? Did I change the way I'm going to live my day in any way? And if the answer is no, then it's not Yechaven Libo L'Shamayim. So it's not about more or less. It's about how is our direction? What's the kavanat halev? What's the direction of the heart? Not just intention. What's the direction of our heart? Have our hearts opened in the prayer. Just a final reflection. Rabbi Emmanuel Rackman said a famous thing that we talk about in prayer, the concept of yotzei yedei chovato, that a person has fulfilled their obligation. So he said you have to leave. He reinterpreted that in a radical and clever way. He said it's not about fulfilling your obligation. Yotzei yedei chovato, yetziah means to leave, like yetziat Mitzrayim, to leave Egypt. So you have to do an exodus from the concept of obligation. In order to fulfill the obligation, it's the paradox of prayer, you have to leave the notion of obligation behind. One can only pray if one doesn't feel obligated. One can only fulfill the obligation to pray sincerely if one doesn't view it as an obligation. The paradox of prayer. You have to leave that sense of I must, I should behind. It's not about shoulds, it's about soul. Shabbat, Yetziat Mitzrayim. So Shabbat is mentioned in two contexts. People know it's mentioned in Shemot and Exodus, and it's mentioned in Dvarim, the repetition of the Ten Commandments. The first time it's mentioned, it's Zecher L'Maaseh Bereshit. It's in remembrance of creation. God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. It's a natural world Shabbat. It's a nature Shabbat, an eco Shabbat. And in Dvarim, it's Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. It's in remembrance of the Exodus, of cultivating a mindful awareness of the Exodus in the present moment of Shabbat. So what's the relationship? Are these two versions of Shabbat, or are they related in some way? They both feature as the central organizing principles of the Friday night Kiddush. All the text in Mekadesh Shabbat, the prayer of Kiddush, is centered around this notion. They're related. And the bolt that holds them together is Tzelem Elohim, that all humans are created in the image of God. When we recognize that as an intrinsic part of creation, there's a kedusha, a kavod, a holiness, a significance to people, to all people, regardless of the social constructs of their power or importance, their intelligence, their wealth. Scholarship and wealth are the two the rabbis talk about in the Mishnah that's quoted, Echad Marbev, Echad Mamid. Sorry about that, the audio went out. So the relationship is Tzelem Elohim. If I understand the kavod, the dignity involved in creation that God has created and continuously infuses life force, chiyut, in each person that lives, and that they're a manifestation of the Ritzon Hashem, the will of the Creator. It's living there, there's beautiful holy life in each person. Then I can't enslave a person. I can't subjugate that person to the needs of my ego or convenience through the power or money that I've accumulated. And so in the second version of the Shabbat command, everyone's got to rest. The pasuk says that it's the Eved, the slave, is going to rest. Servants are going to rest. Children are going to rest. And so the fact that you can't have others do malacha for you isn't just a feature of trying to cut off circumvention of the halacha to make you observe Shabbat or to protect your observance of Shabbat, but it's not a safeguard, it's a feature of the Sabbath that others can't do it, because the whole point of the Sabbath is recognizing the dignity of every person. Every person deserves time off from the rat race of labor. So we all have to rest on Shabbat, and you can't cause labor to be done. It's a strike. You can't break the strike. Everyone's striking on Shabbat. We're all not doing labor, and that kind of grew to the weekend. So the hope is that this practice of Sabbath that we're doing will be able to really infuse that sense of kavod and kedusha. It says in the Nusach Svard Kedusha, that is a beautiful text, Kulam Kedusha Yashaleshu. Instead of Naritzcha, right? Everyone will declare 3 times your holiness, God, and there's a sense that in doing it together, doing it repeatedly, that we're fulfilling the command of Timtiu, Kedoshim to you. You should be holy. Ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokechem, because I'm holy. I create you and I have holiness that I'm imbuing and instilling in you. And so we should be able to work with that relational transcendence to come in our relationships with other people to a spiritual place. Our relationships with others are a spiritual practice. Just a final word about COVID-19. Every night, every day, my daughter, because we're both home, thinks it's Shabbos. She doesn't get it. She's 1.5. We're home. So it's Shabbos. And just good Shabbos to everyone. But she also sometimes insists on Havdalah at night. We make Havdalah before going to bed. We have to light a candle, have some wine. It's not the worst. Smell the psamim. Otherwise, we haven't fulfilled our obligation to sanctify the leaving of the Shabbat. And while it's cute, there's a social critique in that as well. We're supposed to be healing. We're supposed to be resting. Part of that is getting enough sleep. Part of that is being at ease. Part of that is not stressing our systems, which weakens our immune response. But it's really about hunkering down and washing our hands and keeping social distance, yes, but also keeping personal rest. And it's a challenge because the society kind of says, no, the economy will work fully just from home. You'll be just as productive. But what we really need is a Sabbath. We sense that. I think a lot of us know it. And so maybe she's right. You know, it's not just Shabbat, but we say in our tradition that every day we remember Shabbat. We remember Shabbat in the Shir Shel Yom, and there's an element of Shabbat in the Chol. And so it's a time to embrace the Shabbat-like quality that happens in every day of life, wishing everyone a peaceful Sabbath, heightened immunity, good health, and holiness.